Roman was an occultist. How he became involved in that field, though, many speculate too. Whether he had become involved out of his blatant curiosity, or for darker purposes, every rumor possible had been spread about him. But what can one expect? When one reaches a certain level of fame and authority, they begin to receive, oftentimes unwanted, attention. This was the case with Roman. He was nothing spectacular to look at. He wore round spectacles that laid on his long nose, shallow emerald eyes, a distinguished goatee and chin, rugged black hair which dropped just below his ears, and was fairly pale. This middle-aged professor from Ohio had never been the life of a party, nor had he ever gone to one of his own free will. Reserved, quiet, and altogether a simple and private man, Roman kept to himself. He had received his doctorates in occultism and medieval metaphysics from the Miskatonic University of Arkham, Massachusetts. Many say that this is where he really began to flourish as an occultist. With access to the university's extensive library, he had read many of its fabled books and learned much in his respective fields. Perhaps a bit more, he admitted, than he had ever wanted to learn. Upon his graduation, he began to work with paranormal investigators, psychics, mediums, covens, and others associated with the occult. Though he often worked alone, the income from giving lectures on medieval metaphysics at universities across the globe had allowed him the freedom to do so. His work with the paranormal was where his infamy came from. However, Roman expected as much and had said many times, "Civilization has always feared what it cannot comprehend." This account is of the last investigation Roman went on. It all started when Roman received a call from a source unknown to him asking for his expertise during an investigation at a residential house in the Cleveland area of Ohio. It was possessed by some dark, dread force. Roman, being the man he was, agreed to assist and packed his usual things. Living not too far from the house in question, Roman arrived later that same fall night, and being met by a group of 3, one of whom was a woman, the one who had originally made the call for assistance, as she was terrified and couldn't deal with the entity in her home any longer. They told him of their struggles. The woman and her husband had moved into the home only a few months prior, and began experiencing strange happenings in their home almost immediately. Trying to pass them off as odd coincidences or forgetfulness with leaving objects in odd places, the being within soon took a darker turn when, in their slumber, they saw disembodied eyes or a disembodied mouth in the darkness of a dreamless sleep. They thought it at first to be the normal strangeness of the dream world, but when both began to have the exact same dreams, they thought something to be amiss. Soon, in their waking, they would see the eyes or the mouth around their home and abroad. The two continued to explain to Roman as they entered the house and took seats in the living room that these two entities had never harmed them, but that they would begin having blackouts for hours at a time, sometimes losing entire days from their memory. When they came to, they discovered themselves sitting on the couch where they were now. It was then that they called in their friend to hold a seance, since their friend was considered a medium. Roman sat quietly as he listened to everything they told, but he already had an idea of what the entity might be. He held his words until all was explained, and even then, he didn't tell what he thought. Roman found it silly to make any guesses until he interacted with whatever it was directly, and he didn't want to frighten the sad group that had called on his assistance. So he listened as their friend the medium continued on. He explained that during their seances they were unable to contact the two beings in the house. Rather, in the visible heat trails from the candles they had lit, they were able to make out what appeared to be a set of eyes, looking at each one of them and blinking before vanishing. Thus far, all other attempted seances got them nowhere, and they haven't been able to communicate with the beings. It was at this point that they contacted Roman. Roman finally spoke. "Have you yet to try a Ouija board?" After a short pause, the husband told that they hadn't. It was now nearing 10 o'clock in the evening, and the sun had since set. The stars hung in the sky ominously. Looking out the window for a moment, Roman could have sworn he saw a grin in the way the empty voids of space shaped between the stars. Then Roman reached to the side of the chair where he had set his briefcase. Opening it, he removed a Ouija board and set it upon the table that was at the center of the floor. He also took out a thick leather-bound book and set it on his lap. "Then we shall use one. I'm certain you are all familiar with how it is used." They nodded and Roman moved forward. He placed the tips of his fingers on the planchette. Slowly, the other three crept forward. Sweat dripped down their necks as fear began to clutch them. There was a sense that they were all being watched, and they could all feel an ever so faint chill of freezing air on their faces. The moment all four had their fingertips resting on the planchette, the lights flickered, dimmed, and then went out, all in less than 6 seconds. The wife, with a scream, jumped back from the board and curled up on the couch, shaking in utter fear. As the terrified woman leapt back and her husband went to comfort her, a grim laugh echoed throughout the house. The young couple looked around frantically in dread. Roman's eyes darted around, scanning the darkened house. The medium and Roman were the only ones who still had their fingertips pressed to the planchette, and as the two searched the room with their eyes, the woman pointed at the board as she was gibbering incoherently and they stared at the board. Suddenly the house went silent and everyone could see their breath. The sliding of the planchette on the board was deafening, yet it slid gracefully across the board as it created a retching scraping noise. Goosebumps were clearly seen by Roman on the medium's arms and the hair on his arms stood straight up. Roman himself could feel the tingling sensation of electricity running through his arm, down to his fingertips and into the planchette and board. The entity or entities were channeling their energy into the board to communicate. From the center of the board, the planchette slid slowly, spelling out its greeting. H-E-L-L-O. "Spirit, may I ask who you are?" Roman questioned, the couple cowering still on the couch, watching the exchange with a focus only fear could give. Again, the planchette slid. I. It went to an empty space to indicate the starting of a new word. A-M. Again, to an empty space. E-Y-E-S. Before Roman could ask another question, again the planchette moved. Its sound against the wooden board was like nail on a chalkboard. Above the board, a floating shadow figure formed into a pair of eyes, blinked, and disappeared. Sliding at a steady, slow, and methodical pace to communicate, it spelled out I. A-M. M-O-U-T-H. "Why are you here?" The wife screamed at the board, sounding as if in agony. The air became colder still, and the house shook with a laugh. The board shook on the table and the two removed their fingers from the planchette. A thumping from the walls and a stomping was heard from every room in the house. A shadow mouth formed above the board where the eyes had been, and grinned evil, baring its teeth at all four of them. The mouth darted forward and dissipated against the medium's face, who pressed against his chair, sweat pouring from his brow, and his breathing heavy in fear. Then, silence. The woman, who was too afraid to talk then, was followed up by her husband. "Answer us!" "Be careful," Roman ordered, yelling with his teeth held together, making his words into a hissing sound as he spoke them. "These are no ordinary spirits." The medium had fallen completely still and silent. Roman took the book from his lap that he had earlier taken out and searched through it until he came across the passage he searched for. He read it to himself. The eyes and mouth. These two beings are known to be visible only when there is no other light present. They appear as a set of eyes with black pupils and or a mouth with glistening white teeth. Who they are or what they are is unknown. Nevertheless, cults worship them, and they are mentioned in some form or another across all cultures. There was a common poem their worshippers or those seeking them out used to call upon them. It is stated in this poem that these beings will grant a wish in exchange of some service to them. The poem is as such: "Eyes and mouth, I call on you, and your bidding I will do. Please come to your servant dear, and my wish I plead you'll hear." Roman looked up from the book he had taken from the Miskatonic University, not bothering to read the parts on the rituals, cults, and other entities associated with these beings, as he had had enough. With a slam, he closed the dark leather-bound book and glared at the two. "What did you two wish for?" he demanded. The same laughing that shook the house was heard. "We just wanted a better life," the wife pleaded as if before an executioner. They knew what they had done, but not the task asked of them. Processing their stories, the experience so far, and the information read, Roman had come to a conclusion. "They've taken your free will. The moment you all lose consciousness is when these two take control of you for the exchange," he accused them. "And you didn't tell me you did this and expect me to get you out of it? You sold your souls. I can't get them back." Anger boiled in Roman's gut. He hated when clients did this. Expecting he could save them from a bargain they struck, he took all he had brought and stuffed it back into his briefcase. He had no intention of trying any further. It was a lost cause and he knew it. The couple pleaded with him, begging him to not give up, but to help. Roman snorted at them. "You should know better than to make bargains with eldritch things," and began to leave the cursed family, when a chill in his neck stopped him dead in his tracks. He could feel the icy breath smacking him, and some unseen black force commanded him to turn around, and so he did. Not but a cubit from his face was the medium. However, his head was a darkness deeper than the lightless, endless void of a black hole, and a wide grin stretched from what should have been ear to ear. The smile reminded him of a certain cat in a book that had been read to him as a child, the teeth bared in a deadly grin. Struck with fear, Roman didn't move, didn't speak. "O mortal, doomed to die, are you frightened?" The mouth questioned him in a voice that reverberated terror and smelt of atmosphere. "It matters not." The eyes appeared above the mouth, and Roman looked and saw that the bodies of the three who had caught upon him were gone without a trace. "Because we have you now." A creeping void filled the world around Roman. He was now floating in nothingness. "Why are you doing this?" Roman whispered, his voice shaking as he stared at the two. The eyes remained fixated on him as the mouth moved over to his left ear. "Be careful. We are no ordinary spirits," the mouth mocked him. Roman tried to look over, but couldn't break from the gaze of the eyes. "You stole a very important book, and they want it back." They? Roman barely managed to speak out. He could feel something winding around him, suffocating him and squeezing him. He didn't struggle though. He knew better, and resigned to accept the fate he had found. "We, us, they, it makes no difference." The mouth moved back into Roman's vision. "But you mortals took it, and you, Roman, you have brought it out from the seal which held it, and we are here to reclaim it." Roman's vision faded, the last thing he saw being the grin of the mouth opening wide, revealing between its teeth the fabled book he had taken from the Miskatonic University. Then, the last thing he felt was being pulled down by a force that twined and writhed around his body. Roman was gone. And so the beings of the outer reaches of this universe have inspired Roman's tale to be written as a warning to mortals of Earth who seek after dark things. Things they created that fell into mortal hands, then sealed and kept from them. Woe to you who keep these dark treasures for yourselves and do not return them, for humanity is not ready.